But we're going to have a great conversation of virtue signaling probably over the next couple weeks. And the math is out there for everyone. Anyone that's watching, just go to OMB, CBO. I mean, some of the other groups that give a darn about the debt. It's all over the charts. You can get emails every single day talking about what's happening in the differentials. And we all ignore it because it's really, really uncomfortable to go home and stand in front of an audience of your voters and tell them the truth, because we've lied to them for so long. And you start to look at federal government has a spending problem. Now, this may not look like a lot, but you start to look at average tax receipts. And I have 2 or 3 slides that if you ever want to argue this, and I've done this with leftist groups trying to show when we raise taxes, when we lower taxes, we always get within a certain band of about 18 to 20% of tax receipts in as part of the size of the economy. There's just this sort of like law of physics in taxes. You raise taxes really high, the economy and growth slows down, you get 18 to 20% of GDP in taxes. You lower taxes, economy grows, you get about 18 to 20% in taxes to GDP. It's just about 100 years worth of data. Okay? You know, I mean, it is what it is. But what's happening is our spending. Okay, you see this huge spike there. That's COVID. We went to crazy town. It became an excuse to fund every dream, every group that ever, you were trying to buy to vote for you, fine. But then you go back to our baseline, and that baseline grows and grows and grows. You've got to understand that spending here, in just about 10 years, the spending crosses about 25% of the entire economy. Yet our best model is we might be getting 18, 19% of the economy in taxes. That differential, year after year after year after year, buries us. And it's not falling revenues. Look at it. Our models actually, even in the long term, the best CBO data still has us hovering around 19% of the economy in tax receipts. And it's within the mean of functioning since the 1960s. So there were years here where we had very high marginal tax rates. Some years where we had very low marginal tax rates. And look at the band. But do you see, if I go way out, if I go out to 30 years, our spending hits 30% of the entire economy. 30% of the entire economy is spending. And every dime of this growth out here is demographics. It'll be the shortfall of Social Security and Medicare. Why is it so hard? That's not Republican or Democrat. We got gray. Look at my hair. And there are fixes. I've come here dozens of times. I've walked through innovative solutions that disrupt the price of healthcare, that disrupt the bureaucracy, that make us more efficient, that make us grow. And we ignore them because it turns out complex problems require complex solutions. And it's not one magic bullet. Oh, sorry, am I allowed to say bullet? But it's not one magic solution. It turns out you've got to do a dozen things, and you've got to do them all at once. And yes, you've got to fix immigration down to you got to legalize technology, to you got to change the way bureaucracies work. So bureaucracies start using these supercomputers to collect data instead of making you fill out paperwork. There are solutions out there. But damn it, this place needs to get rid of its 1990s solution and join this century. And I just bring this board just to knock down one of my leftist friends who always says, but you guys did tax reform and you cut receipts. We're taking in $1 trillion more a year today than we did the year after tax reform. It's spending. $1 trillion more today. So that's like a 25% growth in receipts and revenues and tax receipts post-tax reform within functionally 4 years. Don't tell me it's the tax reform. because the tax reform grew the size of the economy. And do you remember what it did to the Social Security Trust Fund? It actually saved us for a couple of years because there were so many people working. And that growth, could you imagine if we hadn't had the tax reform when we hit the pandemic? Could you imagine if we hadn't had that healthy economy, what the numbers would have looked like? And I'm sorry, I know this is repetitive, but there's a reason saying it over and over and over, because I'm trying to break through to people who've never really thought about the truth of the math. Eliminating every dime of defense on the long term does nothing. Think about that. So here's defense. Defense is going to be sitting around 2.7% of GDP. And we're heading towards a time where just Social Security and the health care entitlements out here are over 15% of the size of the economy. So defense is under 3% of the size of the economy. Just Social Security and the health care entitlements are over 15. Does anyone see the issue? But yet, I will have my brothers and sisters on the left, it's defense, we need to cut it. Fine, it doesn't do anything. The scale of the dollars are so out of control, we gotta stop living in a fantasy world. I know it's good politics. I know it's good virtue signaling. You get your reporters and your constituents at home go, yay, that's true. None of them own a calculator. Or if they do, there's no batteries in it. And you've got to understand, entitlement programs, and I don't like it when you call these entitlement programs. Call them anything you want. Call them mandatory spending, calling them earned benefits. They are earned benefits, and it's a societal promise. I don't give a damn what you call them. It's still about the spending. You need to take a look at what's driving. Over here is the growth over those years. Defense, just Social Security, other mandatory, Medicare, all these, the growth in these mandatories here. How many members here are bold enough to tell the truth? Because when you tell the truth on this stuff, you get attacked ads, you get groups that raise money, lie about it, beat the crap out of you if you're a member of Congress. I can't talk about that, David. In that case, you can't actually talk about the debt and deficits. And Medicare, much of my life I've done healthcare finance. As a child, I was in my state legislature for a couple terms, and I was working on our Medicaid system. And even then, you'd have the experts come sit you down and say, you do realize how much trouble we're in. Well, here we are 30-some years later. Look at the curve. The curve. And this isn't that long from now. We're looking at numbers that are only functionally a decade from now. This drives all policies. If you're a member that says, I care about the environment, where are you going to get the money? I care about defense, where are you going to get the money? Health care is consuming everything. And look, I believe CBO in a couple of weeks is going to update these numbers, and they're going to look much uglier. We have some back-of-the-napkin math we've done with the Joint Economic Committee, but I used the last year's CBO number for this chart. So here's my point once again. Over the next decade, there's functionally $1 trillion of additional spending on Medicare. If you add in Medicare, Medicaid, it's one something. Take a look here. When you get out here, this is 1.1 trillion increase. That's 9 budget cycles from now. It's not 10 years, that's 9 budget cycles from now. So if I came to you saw the earlier chart, it said, okay, a decade from now, if the nominal interest rates stay where they're at, our interest cost is $1 trillion a year a decade from now. And now my additional spending on Medicare and Medicaid is an additional $1 trillion. Does anyone start to see where a structural deficit of $2 trillion a year is? Now, you promised your voters you're going to balance the budget. What you going to do? Just stop paying the interest on our debt? Okay. Stop paying Medicare? Stop paying Medicaid? Fine. How about Social Security? Because remember, 10 years from now, the trust fund's gone. Our brothers and sisters who are on Social Security that rely on it are going to take what? Around a 25% cut. We're going to let that happen? It's coming. The math is real. You can't pretend it away. And you start to look at some of the lunacy that we get from our friends on the left. Well, let's just tax more. Even 100% tax rate on small businesses and upper income families. You can't even come close. You can't. So take all their money and just assume that you live in some magic fantasy world where everyone keeps working. Where the small, just let's live in fantasy. This is what you get. My spending in 30 years is, my borrowing is about 12.4% of GDP. If I take every dime of someone who makes $500,000 or more, the next dollar, we just take it. You get about 5% of GDP. And that's pretending people would keep working. The math is the math, and we need to stop lying. And look, if you don't believe me, go look up CBO. Go to Brian Riddell, Manhattan Institute. He does a beautiful job of taking ONB data, CBO data, some of the others out there, and puts it on charts that it's absorbable. But he walks through all your solutions. What if we, repeal every, the tax cuts, and raise the taxes on low-income people? How about if you get rid of every tax idea that's out there? So all the Democrat solutions, you still fall incredibly short. You get a fraction of what's required. And you go on some of the other solutions that have been offered. No easy pay-fors for Social Security, Medicare programs. Everything falls short. So I need more than 6% of GDP, and if I take almost every solution, I only pick up a fraction of that. The math is the math, and the math will win. And now here's the point where I'm going to make some of my own friends on my side a little cranky. I'm going to tell the truth. Many of the solutions we run around here and tout, we're going to balance in 7 years. We're going to balance in 10 years. Do you understand the fraud? We say, well, we're going to cut Medicare, okay? We're going to shift it to the individual. We're going to do this. We're going to take Medicaid, and we're just going to cut our spending because we handed it back to the states. They're shell gaming the math. They're not willing to actually tell the system, we're going to legalize technology. The thing you can blow, this exists today, the thing that looks like a large kazoo, you can blow into it. It tells you have a virus, bangs off your phone to know you're not allergic to a certain antiviral, and orders your antivirals, allowing that algorithm, that technology, to write a prescription. You can't do that. Why? You know anyone with a diabetic pump? All day long, that algorithm is prescribing to them. We got to get this out, because if you can't have that type of technology disruption, my other is a much grander theory. 5% of our brothers and sisters who have multiple chronic conditions are over half of our healthcare spending. We are on the time of miracles where we're seeing cures. We, as a body, need to basically do an Operation Warp Speed as a way to save ourselves from our own crushing debt. Bring those cures. If it's true that a San Diego company, which has just gotten bought up, was working with CRISPR, has now cured about 6 people of type 1 diabetes. And we're trying to bring out one of their researchers to come talk to us in February. If it's true, if there's just the slightest opening of a door, that there's a path there. Now, I know that's type 1. I know type 2 is often, we have our health issues, what we do in our farm bill here, the fact that so much of our society has become almost self-destructive with obesity. And yes, I may have just hurt your feelings, but damn it, when government has to pay 70% of all healthcare costs, we actually as a society should care. When I represent the population with probably the second highest per capita diabetes in the world, one of my tribal communities in Arizona, when I meet people who are blind on that community, who have lost parts of their feet, is that compassion? So what would happen if we could marry up legalizing the technology that will make your life easier and more convenient and make you healthier? And yes, it does mean you don't walk into the urgent care center because you have a breath biopsy in your home medicine cabinet. Legalize the technology, and then we push as hard as we can that if we're in the age of miracles, cure, 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 because that's more moral and compassionate. And damn it, it has an amazing effect on U.S. debt. Remember how many times I showed you? 31% of all Medicare spending is related to diabetes. What would happen if you could cut half of that? And yes, it's lifestyle. Yes, it's what people eat. Yes, it's exercise. Yes, it's those things. But at some point also, what would happen if we can get people, give them back islet cells that produce insulin again? We found a way to cure hep C. Remember when we were getting this body, when I first got here, was getting ready to try to figure out to have hundreds of thousands of people get liver transplants. And it was going to bankrupt Medicaid systems all over the country. And then someone came up with a hep C cure. And it was really expensive. And we bitched about the cost of it, except for the fact it cured them. And like 7 months later, there was a second drug that crashed the price. Was that moral? Of course it was. Was it really good economics? Was it just compassion? Yes. I need this to become part of our lexicon, that the solution is disruption through technology, optionality, but it's also the morality of we need to push those cures out because it's really good economics. Instead of giving lists of things of, here's how we're going to cut the debt and deficit, we're just going to shift it to someone else to spend. Is this body, and particularly to the freshmen and the freshman staff that I've been trying to talk to with this speech, this will be the most important stuff you deal with in your time here. It's not the shiny object that may get you on Fox News tonight. It's not the shiny object that gets you applauded when you go into your town hall meeting. Oh, we did this. This stuff is hard. It's complicated. You are going to be lobbied like a war. They're going to spend money in your district beating the crap out of you because you're taking away their money. It also saves this country and gives my little Matthew, who's 6 months old, a future. And that's the morality. With that, I yield back.